This is The Wheel Weaves, a Wheel of Time podcast with no spoilers. Welcome, listeners. This podcast is safe for first-time readers because it's made by a first-time reader. I'm your host, Dani, and I'm the one who's taken on the task of reading through this 15-book mega-series. I'm joined by my co-host, Brett, and our special guest co-host, Andrew from the Black Tower, and they're going to act as my tour guides on this journey. Before we get into things today, we really want to thank and welcome Tiana Badillo to the Wheel Weaves Patreon team. We're super excited to have your support, and thank you for your generous contributions. All right, and this episode, we are going to be talking about Chapter 36.
Web of the Pattern.
Yeah, Web of the Pattern.
Yeah, and big welcome to Andrew.
Oh, thank you guys. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here.
You flatter me. You honor me too much. Like Dani said, I'm Andrew. I am one of the founding members and ongoing co-host for the Black Tower podcast. And it's been just a couple weeks since I believe it was Dani contacted the podcast on Instagram asking if we'd want to come on and do something. And
have a little collaboration. Why not?
Oh, yeah. I love collaborations between any content creators, especially podcasts. And I am beyond honored that you guys asked us to come on. We're starting off small with just one of us. It just happened to be me this time around because I kind of bogarted the access to Instagram for no apparent reason.
That's kind of your commission for actually, doing
checking
the Instagram.
It out, so. Yeah.
When I post a picture once every 4 weeks.
Yeah. Andrew, you were also the one who reached out to us right when we got started and offered any help that we might need starting out. And so, we haven't forgot that. That was very, very kind of you.
Yeah, right at the very beginning when I wasn't expecting anyone to even,
know
necessarily...
that we exist.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
It's the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, as they
right?
say.
As they
say.
And
I happened to see a tweet from you guys on Twitter when I was still the main one on our Twitter. And I was like, I really like the name of the podcast. And when I read what the podcast was about, that it was you two with Dani.
First time reader.
When I saw that you were a first time reader and Brett had read the series, and I'm like, this guy has got a tough road ahead of him. I know we've done, even when I remember doing our book review for the entire Eye of the World and trying not to spoil anything beyond the first book was so hard because there's so much in this book that...
Well, and I bet there's so much in another 13 books.
Yeah, that's the hardest part is remembering what happens in which book. So...
Oh, yeah, that's a big one too. And when I'm talking in the podcast, in the Black Tower podcast with another two guys that have read the entire series, the pressure isn't so high because even if I mess up and it's not within what we're talking about, I can just edit it out and nobody's the worse off. But here, if I mess up, then
pressure's on here.
I'm ruining part of Dani's experience, which I cannot do.
No, that is not allowed. You won't be invited back. No, just kidding.
I can't blame you. Part of me is so jealous of your experience that you're getting with the first time, because my first time reading the series was all on my own. I had no clue that any of Robert Jordan books ever made it to #1 bestseller for anything.
How did you get into the series?
So I had just finished reading Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and I still had this absolute love for fantasy series. I didn't want to just watch the Lord of the Rings. I wanted to find another series to read. And we went down to my grandma's, which is about an hour and a half away. And a family friend said, "Hey, have you heard of this series called The Wheel of Time?" And I said, "No, what's it about?" And he's like, "Well, the author is from Charleston, South Carolina. And I live in South Carolina." And as soon as he said that, I was like, sold. I want to check it out.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Brett has a fun fact to share with us.
Yeah, I do have a fun fact. And this one is about the theme of this chapter, because we got a lot of information about the pattern and the Wheel of Time and the topic of fate.
Right.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of Googling about the fates and kind of where that originated. And there was some really fun information online about the fates, because a lot of people think when you say the fates, what comes to mind immediately is the 3 witches. So if you think about the Shakespeare production of Macbeth, you get the three witches, and then there is that Disney version of Hercules where you have the three fates.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Hercules.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting though, but with fates, it's typically a representation of three goddesses that are often depicted as weavers of a tapestry on a loom.
Yeah.
And the tapestry is the dictation of the destinies of men. So that concept that RJ brings up with the pattern,
and how every life is like a thread in the pattern.
Yeah,
and that's
he's like
cool.
really drawing that from where the myth of fates comes from. So, but also really fun fact there about Min's viewing. If you remember her viewing of Rand, was there were three women, just the three goddesses, if you will, three women standing over a funeral bier with Rand on it.
Good fact, Brett.
Thanks.
I really love like Greek mythology as well.
Yeah,
so
definitely really interesting.
Like the Disney movie of Hercules, as inaccurate to Greek mythology as it is still one of my favorite Disney movies.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It always makes me feel like I can go the distance.
Yeah, sometimes we just listen to the soundtrack like with our child around, because we always put on Disney soundtracks, and it's nice that now we have a child and I can be like, it's for the child. No, it's for me.
There's an excuse now.
Yeah.
Well, it's also funny. What got me into Greek mythology was the video game Age of Mythology. I don't know if you ever played that.
I have not.
Well, you should check it out.
Yeah.
There's really so many games and movies and stuff that since doing podcasting, I've been told I need to check out. I need to make a list, and I still haven't.
Yeah, if only there was like another 8 hours.
If you make a list, you'll just end up feeling bad about yourself that you didn't get to your list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Pretty much.
And then you're just going to throw the list away and reread Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
Okay. And so right now, my job is to re-listen.
Yeah, it's going to be like that all night, I think.
I'm going to re-listen. That's going to be my job, because I really want to talk about this chapter.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was about to say. I'm talking too much about something that has nothing to do with Wheel
That's
of Time.
true. That's typically how this happens. Is we go on a long tangent. But so that's my job, is to reel us back in. So chapter 36, Web of the Pattern. And just from this title, I know we are going to get a lot of information.
Yeah, information chapter.
I wrote here, that's Brett's favorite.
It is.
So... and then the picture is of some like leafy vines, and I never pay attention to those because it doesn't matter.
But I'll just point out that the last couple times we've gotten this 3 leaves on a vine symbol is typically with Tinkers and with Nynaeve.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different this time.
Yeah, that's weird. All right. So we are still in Rand's perspective in this chapter. It's been a while.
Yeah, we've gotten a huge chunk of these last few chapters, just Rand and Matt.
Right. And Matt's the worst right now. But we left these boys just as they arrived at the Queen's Blessing in Camelin. We met the innkeeper. How do I say his name? Basil?
Yeah, Basil Gill.
Basil Gill, who knows an awful lot about Tom Marilyn.
Yeah, we got a huge information dump last chapter all about Tom. And that was really fun to break down.
Oh, yeah. You gotta love Master Gill.
Yeah.
So we start out this chapter. Master Gill takes them to a table and gives them a small portion of food, which doesn't really seem like enough for these starving boys who haven't eaten in 2 days. And Gill asks them what kind of trouble they're in. And he thinks that if he's going to help them, he should know what he's getting himself into. Yeah. And I think fair.
Yeah, because just to remind you, he does have that knowledge about Owen being in trouble with Aes Sedai, which is why Tom took off. And he's assuming that if, Matt and Rand are in trouble with Aes Sedai, that probably it's because one of them is similar to Owen, who can channel.
Right. But they think no.
Yeah. Couldn't be us.
So Rand decides to keep the story simple, and he really doesn't get much help from Matt, who is just like mad at the world, still super cursed. And Rand says that there are some men chasing them and want to kill them and their friends. Plus Moraine is trying to help them, and Tom didn't really trust her, but he was helping too. Tom died in Whitebridge, saving them from these men.
It's interesting that you talk about Matt being cursed.
That's just my word for it.
It's almost like to write Matt during this phase of Matt's life Robert Jordan channeled at the time every high school emo he ever
I
met.
actually used the term angsty in my notes.
That's what it seems to be. Yeah.
He is the angstiest
like he
of
is
teens
probably
right
listening
now.
to like My Chemical Romance.
Hey, you leave My Chemical Romance alone, all right? I love the Black
No, it's
Parade
good,
album
but it's
still.
angsty. It's angsty, okay?
It is. On the days where I feel
Yes.
mad at the world, I just listen to the Black Parade.
That's
You know
good.
what's funny
And
is
then
we
what
just
about, like-
listened to that in
yeah,
the car the
I'm
other
Not
day.
Okay.
Yeah.
It like came on a Spotify playlist.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
such
not
a
bad.
good song.
Yeah, all of them are
Oh,
good.
so good.
Yeah. But also super angsty. And I think we already discussed this in a past episode, why we're probably not getting any Matt chapters right now.
Yeah, we did.
Like, we don't want to actually be in Matt's head, and to actually, for Robert Jordan to actually write from Matt's perspective right now would probably drive him into a dark place.
Yeah, and give away probably too much about what's happening with Matt, because truthfully, we have no idea. But I was going to point out, too, it's kind of funny because the way that Gil is playing off the whole, you know what, dark friends aren't going to hurt you here, don't worry about them, they won't be trouble. That's like a huge callback to what we saw happen in Bayerlawn with Master Fitch at the Stag and Lion.
Yeah, and Master Fitch was a jerk.
Yeah, when Moraine was like, hey, you got to be careful
Yeah, he
because
was
there's going to be
such a
people.
mansplainer, that guy.
And it's just kind of funny that both innkeepers are like, hey, don't worry, dark friends aren't going to bother you here.
I mean, to me, the interesting thing is even the tidbits we get into Matt's demeanor in this chapter and before, for Robert Jordan to be able to harness that kind of artistic writer energy, it goes beyond just a simple reading about it, you know, Google searching emos to capture
no Google searching for Robert Jordan.
Capture the high school essence of the angsty emo culture, even in when he was writing this in the 80s.
Yeah.
For it to be published in 1990, I mean, it takes an incredible amount of insight, and it still translates equally to, or at least when I was in middle school, high school, the angsty
I think it's
teenagers
just
then.
like the thing that repeats itself is kids are generally the same in all points of like time.
Something to do with those hormones.
Something like that.
Because Matt is so pessimistic.
I feel like in the last episode I actually called him a pessimistic Peter.
Yeah,
that's what
used,
I called him. So yeah, I think the issue is that Matt just really, like, it's so much more than just being like emo, emotional teenager. I really truly believe that he is somehow cursed. Like, we've gone over before how everybody back in Eredal was, you know, basically driven inwards, and they were suspicious of everyone, and all this stuff happened. And now Matt took something from Shatter Logoth, and I believe that there is some connection, and he is just suspicious of everyone, and he's clearly, it's so much more than he's just like, he's not thinking logically.
He's like imploding in on himself.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's a good theory.
So it sounds like you're saying that he took something from what we know as Shatter Logoth and is now possessed by the spirit of Shatter Logoth. The same thing that Moraine tells us destroyed Eredal.
That's what my theory is, anyway.
That's a very interesting
that's what
theory.
it seems like.
That's what they're kind of pointing us to right now. So,
but you see him. We get on the second page, at least is the paperback cover that I have, and he's already, you know, Rand is sitting there talking about trying to meet with their friends and meet with the rest of the group, and they should find them sooner or later. And Matt pulls the ultimate My Chemical Romance angsty move of, well, if they're alive. And it's like, dude, what the fuck? Way to be a negative Nancy.
No kidding. I think I use that term too.
Yeah.
Because he definitely, negative Nancy, Debbie Downer, pessimistic Peter. It's all coming full circle.
Pessimistic Peter. I got to remember that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. But Gil, before he like scurries off to go fix some pipes or something, tells Rand that he will know if Moraine comes into Camelin, because there's a whole network of people who keep their eyes on the comings and goings, and word spreads. And Rand asks about Elida. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yep.
Okay. Elida, and Gil says, no way, Jose. He doesn't think so because of their history with Tom, and he thinks that she will be able to sort of find that out about them.
Well, it seems like a very Aes Sedai thing too. Like Moraine definitely seems the type to be able to pry information out of you.
Right, because she was the one who was all pissed off that Tom went to leave to go meddle in Aes Sedai business.
Yes,
right?
because it was like Morgase and Elida basically teamed up against Tom when he came back after the whole Owen incident. So that's why, yeah, it's probably just best not to go anywhere near here for now, at least.
Yeah, and then Gil also thinks
Is that revealed by now?
Yes.
Yeah, we just found out about that last
learned
chapter.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Last
was making
chapter.
sure, like,
Oh, yeah.
I read 36. I didn't skim back over 35.
Yeah,
I could
No,
probably
that
that's
was a
should've
okay.
actually.
big reveal last chapter.
That was basically the whole
Okay.
chapter last time, was learning about Tom's sort of past with the Queen.
Yeah.
So I know about
It's
that.
past with the Queen and with the Aes Sedai and
And
that
with-
kind of stuff.
yeah, exactly. So, but Gil also thinks here that going to the guards would also be a bad idea. And he says that they would be able to take care of Dark Friends, but word would get back to Elida, and that is not what they want. And Rand agrees. And actually, we get some positive from Matt, who nods vigorously while stuffing a fork into his mouth. So Matt agreed. Don't go to the guards.
He got gravy on his chin.
Yes.
We can't miss that
He
part.
does get gravy on his chin.
He's just stuffing a fork in his mouth, gravy on his chin, like, yeah. They're right. No guards.
Yeah, no guards. I don't trust them. I don't trust anyone.
I love what Gil says. He's like, you'd be right back where you started. Not feeling safe anywhere, not being able to go anywhere, having no one that you can trust, nowhere you can relax.
Right, and we're supposed to be able to trust this guy.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, they have on the positive side that Tom told them specifically to go here.
that's true. That's the
so-
only reason I'm not 100% thinking this guy's a dark friend too.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only reason, because Tom told them to go here.
Yeah.
And I did speculate last time that I think this guy might be related to Tom.
You
in
did.
some
You
way.
made the prediction that it's possible because we know that Owen was the nephew of
Yeah.
Tom. So you speculated that possibly
Yeah,
Master
that was
Gil.
a really wild speculation
It was.
that Gil is Tom's brother or something.
I
Like,
think that's exactly what you
yeah,
said.
that
But I
was
mean, it's
wild.
possible that there's some sort of blood relation there because
that's what I think.
Gil seems pretty forgiving, even though Tom, maybe
Did a
made
lot of shit.
Yeah, kind of pissed him off. So
Well, and then this is the point that Gil gets called away by the cook to go fix something, and off he goes grumbling about it. But before he leaves completely, he mentions that there are rats everywhere.
yeah,
And I go, uh-oh, the spies!
yeah.
There's spies everywhere.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking it's a little bit too bad that the city of Camelin doesn't have like Alberta level security against
Yeah,
rats.
rat control.
Yeah, because it's
I don't know if you know, Andrew, but our province of Alberta has like a 0 rat population.
Yeah, and we actually have like border security around the border of Alberta that hunts down rats.
I think I've heard something about that.
Well, it's kind of
like,
gone around
recently.
the internet too of
It's
people
like the
thinking that
only
it's fake, but it's
place,
like an
yeah.
actual thing that it is. Alberta's completely rat free, so
Yeah.
like you can't have
Holy
them, you
crap.
can't own them, and then we have security around the border protecting against them.
Yeah.
So
Filthy vermin.
Yeah.
Sorry to any rat pet owners. I've heard rats can sit on your shoulder.
I've heard they also are spies for the Dark One. So
Oh my goodness. Okay. So Rand sees that Matt.
I want a pet rat. It's a spy for Shy Time.
Yeah. But Rand sees that Matt has like stopped eating, so he like tries to tell him that he has to keep his strength up, and he's basically being like a mother. Come on, Matt, you gotta keep eating. You gotta keep your strength up if we're gonna reach Tarvalin. But this pisses Matt right off, like even further than he already is. And he says, all this time, yeah, you had to reach Camelin, and Moraine will be waiting for us. Well, now we're here and no one else is. And then Rand has to like take this deep breath, calming strategies.
yeah, you have to consider
Yeah.
that Rand's been on the road with him for like possibly 2 to maybe
I would
like
lose
3
my
weeks.
shit.
Yeah, like we're not sure exactly the
I would-
time frame, but
Rand literally has his hands on the table on either side of his plate,
shaking.
pressing them
Yeah.
hard into the table to keep them from shaking.
He's so pissed off.
Because he's caught in between the fear that everyone he has ever known and felt close to is dead. Because he has no idea any better than Matt
And
does.
Matt won't shut up about talking about how they're dead.
Yeah,
and the absolute fear that Matt is right and they are dead. And he recognized in the last couple chapters that Matt is not Matt anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that's
The Matt
becoming
he
apparent.
knows is not the Matt he grew up with.
No way, no.
And it's become violently apparent.
No, and a little while ago, he even said, like, what's wrong with you, man? You haven't laughed in days. And, like, he's very aware that there's something wrong with Matt.
Because Matt makes the comment that he would do anything to sleep in an actual bed. Here they are in a place where they can sleep in an actual bed, and Matt still isn't happy. And Rand's like, brah, what the fuck?
Exactly. And Rand goes, we're alive! More sharply than he intended. And he has to take a deep breath to try to moderate his tone. Yep. And so he says that they're going to go to Tarvalin. He's trying to look on the bright side. He wants to know why they're so special. He basically intends to find out why they're so important and that it's good they're still alive.
Yeah, Rand has a little bit about that Two Rivers stubbornness where he just refuses to quit. And it's a repeated statement by Rand over and over again in the last few chapters, like, I won't give up. So Rand is pretty hard-headed in that fact.
Oh, yeah, because he finishes that statement with the, I won't give up.
Yeah.
Just like matter of
fact. It's almost like he's, I was thinking that, like, Rand saying that is, like, he's telling it to himself more. It's, like, to keep himself going.
And then Matt counters with, all these people, and any of them could be dark friends. Master Gil promised to help us awfully quick.
Yeah.
What kind of man just shrugs off Aes Sedai and dark friends? It isn't natural.
Yeah, like, he's so suspicious.
Rand has the best response. He's just like, eat.
Yeah. But Rand actually remembers something really important here, which is, like, one of the first times Rand actually remembers something that someone told him. And he remembers about the rats being spies for the Dark One.
Yeah, so it's always good to kind of keep your head up for that.
So when they're done here, the serving maid takes them to their room in the attic, and she smiles and giggles at Rand a lot.
Yeah, I love this. We get a little bit of a lighthearted vibe here.
Which makes him very uncomfortable, and thinks about how he wishes he was good with the ladies like Perrin.
Yeah, and I think we brought this up last time, how it is just Rand and Perrin who go back and forth.
Yeah.
Matt's not included in this whole good with women thing.
No.
Yeah.
Perrin never thinks, I wish I was good with women like Matt. No. It's always Rand.
Like Rand, and then Rand thinks about Perrin.
Yeah. But neither of them are very good with ladies, so let's be real.
Yeah. Because he does literally nothing with it.
And he's glad when she leaves.
Yeah.
So Matt is just the worst right now, and Rand leaves him alone in the room because he can't really stand to be around him. And he's hoping that Matt will actually get some sleep and that he'll feel better when he's rested.
I mean, it's so heartbreaking to see Matt right now. Like, we're literally 4 pages into chapter 36. If at no point before right now you have thought there is something seriously wrong with Matt, you should know now.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's like a just ongoing theme of Matt just being awful.
Well, and they just arrived in Camelin, which is like the grandest city in the world, and Matt's going to stay in bed.
And sleep all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So Rand has had enough of this Matt and leaves and goes to sit in the common room, but is very anxious and keeps eyeing everyone coming in or out of the room. And once a Queen's Guard comes in to look around and then, like, leave. They do that to take care of the good Queen's men, and the serving maid tells Rand that he has nothing to worry about.
Yeah, so you'll remember from last chapter the whole color situation.
Yes.
Where Rand bought the red cloth, and then the guys with the white cloth were, like, antagonizing him almost.
Yeah.
And this is kind of more confirmation because the guard coming in, is in red, right? And Rand's got the red on his sword, and the maid confirms that, hey, they look after good Queen's men, which you probably are.
Clearly.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah. So you have nothing to worry about. So that's kind of just more confirmation with this color scheme that is important.
Okay, cool. So then he asks if there's a place that he can go that might be, like, empty or more quiet, and he's told about the library. So off he goes. And then he is totally amazed by the library, and, like, there are so many more books than he's ever seen before, and he thinks about how Tam would just love it.
It's kind of cool that we even get the fact that there is a library.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we haven't seen that yet.
No, that's true. I mean, like, Tam had books on a shelf.
Yeah, but that's just like a collection of books for one person.
Yeah.
So
thinking about Tam makes him feel, like, super empty and all angsty with not knowing who he is. So there's that.
Yeah.
So he's in this library and he's looking all around, and then he hears a throat clear behind him, and he turns and sees a crazy tall, strange creature, and thinks right away it's a Trolloc, and like screams and reaches for his sword.
Yeah, this is a pretty great description because it's like Rand turns and he's always the tallest guy out there.
Yeah.
And then his eyes go up and up and up.
Yeah.
And it's like right to the roof, 10 foot tall. It's like boom.
Crazy tall. And so he reaches for his sword, but then the creature says that he wishes that humans didn't do that, and his little ears were twitching.
Yeah.
And right away in my notes, this makes me think that this is the Ogier thing, because the appearance is like ogre-like, and I think of like Shrek's little ears.
Yeah, we did do a couple of definitions previously about like the tufted ears and the snout noses.
Yeah.
And they're gigantic. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from. I can understand Rand's
you're suspicious of everyone
because you just suddenly hear a throat clear behind you. Obviously, it's super deep, and you look around, and here's this creature that is taller, wider than anything you've ever seen, with a face wider, more animalistic than anything you've ever seen. And
it's kind of funny because it's a little bit of a side note that Ogier are bigger than Trollocs, or like at least comparable.
But the thing I love about Loyal is that he says it's our own fault, I suppose.
Ooh, and I'm going to stop you right there, because I have a big note in my notes about this.
Yes, this is another reference, yeah.
I noticed it right away, because...
Oh, I'm excited.
I said, so if the shadow fell on the ways, and I had predicted that the ways were sort of like a teleportation type way of traveling.
Yeah, so just to bring it back, because we first heard of the ways back in chapter 21 with Moraine.
Oh, good. Okay.
When Nynaeve was spying on Moraine and Lan.
Because they were talking about how did so many Trollocs come here, and then what happened to all the bodies? They're all gone.
Yes, but we didn't get a definition.
Right, but we also saw that Trollocs were popping up almost out of the ground.
Yeah.
And so I speculated that they were using like some sort of teleportation.
Yeah.
And if the shadow fell on the ways, then does that mean that the Dark One has control of it? Like, are we assuming the shadow means Dark One, or like bad guys?
It's a possibility. Yeah. And we don't know, because we still, after this chapter, we still don't get any definite confirmation.
That's fine, but that's what I think.
Yeah, okay. And really important from what Moraine had said in that private conversation between Moraine and Lan, she said that the ways are closed.
Right.
So she says the ways are closed, and then here we get to hear the Ogier say that the shadow fell on the ways.
Right.
So it's just like really specific wording. But
there's also stuff that Aes Sedai now are unaware of. Like, there's a lot of information that they lost since the breaking of the world.
We do know that, yeah.
So maybe she just doesn't know. Or maybe she does know, and that's what she's told to say. I don't know.
Possibly.
Not give full truth.
I mean, that is the way of the Aes Sedai, to word things in a way where you can't lie, but nothing compels you to give the 100% full blunt truth. So Loyal finishes with that.
Yeah, this is really cool as a point.
Yeah.
6 generations now, 6 Ogier generations. Right after the War of the 100 Years it was. The shaggy head shook and let out a sigh that would have done credit to a bull. Too long, and so few to travel and see, it might as well have been none. Which is an incredible indication to the low impact, low visibility that the Ogier as an entire entity, as a race, as a people, have had, and even being a part of the world that we know.
Yeah, they are definitely secluded, and I just think it's really, really cool, because we know that the War of the 100 Years was about 1,000 years ago. So if that was only 6 generations for Ogier, you could assume that with like people, like with humans, that would be anywhere from like 30 to 50 generations, and for Ogier, it's 6.
Yeah.
So they live an incredibly long time. So like a generation for humans is like 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
But if you do the math on it for an Ogier, then it's like 150 years.
Like for generations.
For a generation. Yeah. So that's typically like how old you get to start reproducing.
Yeah.
So.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the, in Frozen, the little rock trolls.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's what that kind of reminds me of.
Do they
they're
live a
like
long time?
really old and they live a long time and they, know the secrets of like the universe.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's just what my brain thought of.
Yeah, I mean, they are really old, and we definitely learn a little bit more about age shortly. But yeah, the generation thing's pretty cool.
The thing I love the most about this whole scene, or one of the things I love the most, is how Rand goes from asking what he knew was the obvious question anybody asked him to realizing it was a rude, improper thing. And this is definitely due to his interaction with Narg.
And he gingerly offers his hand for like a handshake.
But instead of asking what he is, he's like, you know what? My name is Rand al'Thor.
But that's just like the hospitality coming out of,
Sure, a nice Two Rivers hospitality.
Yep.
My goodness.
And
well, you have to consider too that like RJ having that Southern hospitality probably is a little bit reminiscent of Two Rivers.
Yeah.
Yeehaw, right, so. Nice to meet you. How you doing right now? You want to come in for some biscuits and gravy? I tell you what.
We'll take your word for it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I'm from South Carolina. I can make those kind of jokes. Yeehaw.
And it's funny because us being from Alberta, we can also say yeehaw. So
yeah, we can. We're like the
Texas of Canada.
That's what they say because of all the ranches.
Yeah.
Because this is where we have like the cattle ranches.
There you go.
Yeah.
The Texas of Canada.
But we can also say
I like that. I actually really like that. A
and a boot.
A boot.
And sorry. We say sorry.
I need to fix my boot. I don't know what you're talking about. Which is how we make fun of people like from Wisconsin and stuff, not necessarily Canada. Yeah, the only jokes I think in the States we make about Canadians is like being overly sorry. Just like sorry.
It's funny that you say that, but they had to put it into Canadian law that saying sorry is not an admission of guilt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like for real.
For real.
Yeah. Well, I have a funny story about that. When I was in Israel, and they play this game on the beach in Israel with like a paddle and a ball. And me and my friend were playing. They were teaching us how to play. And we kept hitting it like terribly off. And every time we hit it wrong, we go, sorry. Oh, sorry. And we go back and forth. Sorry. And then they're like, we should just call this Canada ball. It's called sorry.
Sorry ball. Like the whole game. Have you played the game Sorry? With like the little figures that you like. Yeah. That's just like Canada. Of course. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oops. I'm sorry. I have to send you home. Sorry. It's so polite. It's the most polite board game.
Oh, yeah. But I love how Loyal reacts to Rand offering his name. Because he gives a formal bow and he says, Loyal, son of Arent, son of Halan. Your name sings in my ears, Rand al'Thor. And without really missing a beat, Rand reiterates the formal greeting of, your name sings in my ears, Loyal, son of Arent, son of Haran.
Yeah, and he loses it. But he definitely thinks that it is some sort of weird formal greeting. And he's like, okay, I'm going to pick up.
He just goes with it. And I think that's great. He's just like, I guess this is how you do things.
Mm-hmm. And if you think about that from a character standpoint, where they're willing to set aside the question they want to ask, are you a Trolloc? Are you this? What are you?
Yeah, and just introduces himself as... I wanted to say person to person, but it's not. It's like soul to soul almost, right? Like,
well, this is like a little Avengers dip for you here. It's where Groot says to Captain America, says, I am Groot, and then Steve Rogers says, I am Steve Rogers. And it's like, nobody's ever said that to Groot before.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a good reference. I like that. So I commend Rand here for trying like really hard not to insult this creature. Like at this point, he doesn't even know what this guy is. And we learn that this creature is new to Camelin and he's new to being around humans in general. And his first day in Camelin, people were screaming and crying, and he had to be rescued by the Queen's Guard, who were even fearful of him.
Well, there's like a mob basically chasing him here. So,
just like shy chasing of some pitchforks and torches. Trolloc. But
it's a scene out of Frankenstein.
Yeah. So he's been there for 4 days now, but he hasn't been able to leave the inn. And even Master Gil has asked him not to use the common room.
Yeah, well, it's kind of telling to how far removed the Ogier are from society.
Well, and especially considering on the way to Camelin was Bunt, right? Who was telling them all about how Camelin is Ogier built and all that stuff. And they have the term Ogier and they know all about it. But to actually see
They're
one...
so proud of it. How the inner city is built by Ogier.
But there's no recollection of what that actually means.
Yeah, and who the Ogier actually are.
That's why I love Rand's realization of exactly who and what Loyal is.
Yeah, and I think Loyal appreciates Rand as just a genuine person.
Yeah.
I can see it now. Rand being like, "You're an Ogier," and Loyal being like, "No shit."
Yeah, like, what do you mean? Of course, that's what I am.
But we get such a good glimpse into Ogier culture.
Well, exactly. Like, he's a very polite and well-mannered creature. And he goes, I was almost beginning to get a little upset.
Yeah, he has a very strong vibe as an Ent from Lord of the Rings. Where it's like, you know, you're very hasty. Yeah.
Imagine the difference in the terms of haste for the Ogier.
Or hot-headed.
And humankind. Yeah. And it gets so much more in depth as the chapter goes on.
Yeah, that's the whole, like, time is relative.
Nobody wants to put a long handle on their axe. The Wheel of Time has some of the best phrasings and sayings that I've ever encountered in my life.
Yeah, they're good.
Like, I so badly want to look at somebody when they're trying too hard and be like, putting a long handle on your axe. And we're like,
what? Yeah.
You'd understand if you were loyal, if you were an Ogier.
Yeah. So this is where he sort of says that he was beginning to get a little upset and that humans all kind of suck. And it was not for this that he left the steading. And this is where Rand figures out that this creature is an Ogier.
Yeah.
And it turns out that he's also 90 years old, which is apparently very young for an Ogier.
Yeah, and this is where the whole six generations thing kind of, you know, kicks into Rand's mind.
And Rand's like, wait, what did you say?
He's 10 years too young to even speak to the Ogier elders of his state. Yeah. Meaning that at a minimum, you have to be 100 years old as an Ogier to be considered any kind of a mild adult.
Yeah.
To speak to them to even ask.
Well, and that's kind of why you said, like, the whole time is relative thing, where it's like, if you live that long, like you're 90 years old, but you're not old enough. And that's also why the whole, you know, humans seeming hasty
and erratic,
that would make sense, because you know, you're always doing something if you only have a short, you know, 60 to 80 years to live. So
yeah, and that's the thing I love so much about Loyal. He apologizes for calling human beings hasty and erratic.
He goes, I'm sorry if I've offended you. And Ron's like, what?
Loyal's basically he's the Canadian of the group, because he's the one who keeps apologizing.
Yeah, he's very concerned.
Oh yeah.
Something close to a dozen apologies this chapter. So
yeah, and we learn here that the Ogier don't really travel much to the outside, and they think humans are too erratic.
Not outside of the steadings.
And Loyal isn't old enough to leave without permission, but as he was waiting for the elders to decide, he just left without permission.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and there are some elders that called him too hot-headed, and he fears that he proved them right.
But Loyal makes the point, he's like, well, as to that now, you see, the stump had not been meeting very long, not even a year.
Yeah, so they've been in the worst boardroom meeting, you know, sitting everyone down at the table to talk about things.
For an entire year.
For a year.
And that's too short. They hadn't been talking for very long about this.
Yeah.
Goodness.
But Loyal has a little bit of realism to him. He's like, I could tell by the way they were talking that by the time they reached a decision, I'd be old enough to leave anyway. So that means that he's saying that they would be talking for another 9 years minimum.
That's so funny.
Before he was old enough to address the stump and old enough to leave the steading on his own.
And this is 100% why I get the whole Ent vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ents are super old and super calm.
And they take a long, long, long time to say anything.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's where you do get the Ent vibe, because they sit there and they wait forever to see how the world's going, and they're like, you know what, now we have to act.
That's true.
And based off of Ogier culture, as Loyal has explained it to us, he is a hothead. He is very quick to act as far as the Ogier.
Well, for him to just like walk out and leave the steading, absolutely.
Yeah, and Rand here actually has to try to stop himself from laughing at this, because this guy is clearly like very tame, and he's calling himself hot-headed, And he's like, oh man, if this guy is hot-headed, like, what are the rest of the Ogier like? And this is where in my notes I actually write Brett and Andrew will most likely take over here, because we just get into lots of explanation of some really interesting stuff. Because Loyal starts to explain why he left home, and he had spent so much time reading about everything, and he had to see it all for himself. And so he studied and studied, and he really wants to see the cities and the groves, and Rand wants to know what groves are.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting callback too, because the character that we're getting as Loyal he's the guy who read the books, he did the studying, he saw the maps, and he wants to go on an adventure. And the one person we've seen who's identical to that so far
Egwene.
is Egwene.
Yeah.
And it's your perception of the adventure that kind of, tells you how you're going to react to things.
Yeah. Also, Bilbo.
And Bilbo, he wanted to go on the adventure versus Frodo being thrust upon into that adventure.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a huge thing, is that Loyal wants to go out.
Can you imagine Loyal skipping out of the steading? I'm going on an adventure.
That's kind of probably what he did. But yeah, so we do get a little bit of the definition from the groves. The one thing I'll say about the groves, because we don't really get an exact clarification here, but we do know that there are steadings and there are groves, and there seems to be a separation between the two. So we do get to also hear that it seems that the Ogier helped build a lot of the cities for mankind after the breaking of the world. So that would have been like 3,000 years ago. And he wants to see the groves for himself and the great trees. But again, like I said, it does seem that groves does not specifically mean steadings. Steadings being, those domes of, purity or whatever you want to call it. Protection
from all the magic, basically.
And the groves seem to sound like the forests, like the forest they built.
It seems like groves were built not only to glorify the cities they were built in, but to also satisfy the link that the Ogier have to the forest, to the Mother Earth, while they were working in the cities.
The one major distinction I'd say is that if there's a grove there, it doesn't mean it has that protective dome. Yeah, that comes with a steading, so...
Yeah, it says the great trees that kept the memories of the steading fresh.
Yeah, then we get a little bit of Loyal describing his artistic vision of the creation of the groves. And it does seem like that was their, first way to craft things. And that grew into working with stone after the breaking of the world. Because that's something they just learned to do after the fact. And...
yeah, but the groves came from the heart.
Yeah, the groves is like their passion. And the stonework or building cities was like done out of necessity almost.
Yeah. The stone came out of nowhere. The stone was something thrust upon them that they did not know they could do. Because there's still a singing that he alludes to that the Ogier can do with stone. Because he mentions how no matter how hard the Ogier try, they can't make stone grow and live. They can still take it as part of Earth and make it behave in a different way than mankind can with chisel.
Yeah, that does make sense, where it's like of the Earth, so they can do something. It's just not a living entity.
Yes.
So they can't go that extra step as they do with like trees.
But the thing I love the most is when he talks about Kyrian. And he also references the old name that the Ogier have for Kyrian, which is Al Karian Alun.
Yeah, I can't pronounce that.
Yeah, because it's a playoff, but it's funny how with RJ he does have like an older version, and then it's like an allusion to so much time has passed that even names for cities change. The name is included in the older name.
So it was like a shortened version over time.
Yeah.
Well, I also think it's funny that Loyal ran into some other Ogier in Kyrian, and luckily they were from a different setting and didn't know him.
Yeah. So here's a question. Did you look at the map?
No.
Because there is a steading listed on the map.
No, there isn't.
There absolutely is.
I do.
Do you have the book in front of you?
The big map.
Go ahead.
In the southeast corner, bottom right.
Steading Shangtai?
Yeah, there is Steading Shangtai listed.
And is that where...
we don't know.
He's from, or...
we don't know.
But we know he traveled to...
Kyrian from a steading.
From somewhere, and then now he's traveled to Camelin.
Exactly.
Weird. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is that the only steading on the map?
It may or may not be.
It may
Good
or
one.
may
where
not
he is
be.
for
Good
his
one, Andrew. You're so good at not spoiling.
I know I try so hard.
You're getting the hang of it. You may or may not be right.
I'm trying. To go from a 100% entire series spoiler podcast to one where you're like, you're in book 1, chapter 36,
That's
don't
the
spoil
one
shit.
rule. But that's the only setting on the map, right?
Yeah, that's the only one that's on, and this again is the only one labeled on this map specifically. So,
Okay.
like, we know that there must be more than one setting because Loyal's from one, and then
Back to
okay,
Rand
so
and Loyal's conversation. After all, Kiri and
yeah,
Ali.
right. So they're all well. First, Rand's talking about how they were in Kyrian and the Ogier were helping to repair some buildings, and Loyal says that it's all just part of the weaving of the pattern. And then this is where Rand is surprised to find that he believes in the pattern. And Loyal explains all about how everything is interwoven, and he calls people's lives the threads of the pattern, and he thinks that humans are so nuts because their threads are so short.
So let's go ahead and tie this back to the fun fact of the episode
Yep.
about the fates.
yeah.
Blame you, Brett.
Well, that's kind of the thing there too, is that even Rand asking the question, like, I didn't know Ogier believed in the pattern, it's kind of implying that there are some people who don't believe that the pattern is a real thing. And I mean, we've kind of got this whole world where there's a creator and there's a dark one and there's the pattern and then there's the magic system. So there's a lot of evidence that goes into this whole, world view. But I mean, in any worldview, there's always some deniers, right? So we can probably assume that there's some people who just don't believe in the pattern.
oh yeah.
So
It's like a world religion almost.
Yeah.
Where there's some people that say, yeah, this is a real thing. Others that say, no, it's really not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So Loyal says to Rand that the world is for the humans and the steading are for the Ogier. And Loyal is bound to the steading and has to return eventually. And I find that very interesting.
Yeah, he gave us kind of a timeline of what happened. So Loyal says the pattern gave us the breaking of the world, then the exile, then stone, as in working with it, and then the longing, and then gave back the steading before they all died. So it's like a series of events that it seems to tie the Ogier to the steading
Yes.
because of the events of the breaking of the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's just from the order of events there that we hear about.
Yeah.
So.
And apparently the world has changed so much. So cities have just completely gone or go by completely different names. And this is that whole like Kyrian business. And no one remembers anything. Plus the groves are gone. And like that makes him really sad.
Yeah. He kind of gave an outline of what happened in a few cities where it's like Tyr is now the grove is a pasture for horses. And
yeah.
I think Aliens was like a king's park.
He talks about Alien and Tyr.
Yeah. And I say a long and confusing rant to Rand.
Loyal gives a super interesting quote here.
Yeah.
The Ogier voice changed, as if he were quoting something. Till shade is gone, till water is gone, into the shadow with teeth bared, screaming defiance with the last breath, to spit in sight blinder's eye on the last day.
Yeah, and it's really important because it's what Loyal thought from the beginning of meeting Rand.
Because so far it's been what Rand has expected from Loyal. And here, almost literally halfway through the chapter, we have the Ogier expecting something from Rand based no less than what Rand based what he said on Loyal. Well, Rand based what he said based on the appearance of Loyal.
Yeah, it's like you judge someone based on their appearance.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, and I want to say this next part because in my notes I say Loyal quotes something long and confusing to Rand and they sit in silence for a bit. Like that's how I write it. But so Rand asks, "What about these giant trees?" And the only giant tree he's really ever heard of is a Vendosora. And so he asks about it, and Loyal reacts very suddenly and says that an Aielman should know all about that. And sometimes you Aielmen are, think the oddest things are funny. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, and that kind of is just like the mic drop there.
Oh, yes. And I went, another mention of Rand looking like an Aielman.
Yeah. And Loyal is like, motherfucker, you know better than I would. Like,
is this a joke?
You tell
me.
me.
That's the thing, because if you think back to the history lessons we've gotten so far, we know that Avenda Sora is from the Aiel Waste, and the Aiel gave a sapling, Avendor Aldera, to Kyrian as a gift. Yeah.
Of peace, right?
Yeah, a peace offering.
Yeah. Well, and I just find it so interesting because we don't get a lot. We only get these snippets. And I find it interesting in Robert Jordan's writing how right before Loyal entered, he was thinking about his emptiness and his longing for Tam and how Tam would love this library. But then he thinks about, like, where do I fit in? And then this guy shows up and then calls him an Aielman. And it's a very interesting foreshadow, I think, because we already know about that whole battle thing and where he was found and how it was likely he was born of an Aiel woman, right? So
yeah, very likely.
It's all very interesting. Just that the writing is so specific and phenomenal that it's just so intertwining.
It's just little tidbits you get dropped into the story. So
it's just another confirmation that Rand's appearance is strikingly that near enough to what the Aiel look like.
Yeah, that was the first thing that Tom said when meeting him in
You're
Two Rivers.
As tall as an Aielman.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we learned that from, like, the first time we meet Rand and he's in Amon's field, that he was taller than most, that he looked more like the fabled Aielman than he ever did of an Emond's Fielder. And even the Ogier here now, who has 90 years or so of experience, is like, well, you're an Aielman. What are you talking about? You should know better than I.
Yeah. And then Rand gets super defensive and says, I'm not an Aielman. I'm from the Two Rivers. And Loyal...
I've never even seen an Aielman.
Yeah, and he, like, apologizes profusely for not knowing anything. And Rand says that the Two Rivers were once called Manetheren. And maybe Loyal knows of it.
It's kind of funny because Loyal has made it very clear that he has read, like, every book he could ever get his hands on.
Yes.
And then wanted to go seek adventure. And now he's finding out that every book he's ever got his hands on and spent all those years studying, it just, like, doesn't matter anymore. Like, they're just a bunch, it's like you're studying outdated encyclopedias from, like, the 60s.
Yes.
And then you get into the real world and you're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just
way
wrong.
Different.
Yeah.
He gets into this point where, after his comment about Sightblinder's eye on the last day, where he seems to, after the mention of Avenda Sora, it's almost like he feels an incredible amount of guilt. Because he says, you see, everything has changed, and half of what I know is useless. I hope I did not offend you. I'm sure your Two Rivers is a very fine place wherever it is. And that's for Rand. Says, somebody once told me it was called Manetheren.
Yes. And then he
and
perks
Loyal's
right up.
ears perked up.
Yeah.
Happily, mind you. Says, yes, Manetheren. But then his ears drooped down again. There was a very fine grove there. Your pain sings in my heart, Rand al'Thor. We could not come in time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's
mic drop.
Yeah,
that's a mic drop.
Line.
Right. And I think, as, like, you know, my first reader brain, this is referring to that war where they were promised help and none came, so everyone died.
Yes.
Basically.
So with that, the question comes, who truly failed Manetheren?
Right.
Yeah. Well, because we also, at one point in the timeline of things, we had a suspicion that Eredol had somehow betrayed Manetheren.
Yeah.
But then we figured out that the timelines didn't work out.
Yeah, that Eredol fell before Manetheren did.
Yeah. And they kind of betrayed Manetheren in a different way, but not the way that made it like crumble and, you know, die.
But if the Ogier promised to help and then couldn't come in time,
then it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also really interesting because the way Loyal's talking right now, he says, your pain sings in my heart, we could not come in time. So if we know that an Ogier's average lifespan we could estimate is reasonably 300 to 400 years.
Yeah, that was going to be my question.
Yeah, like if you're thinking like if Loyal's like basically like a...
So if like 100 years is, let's say, like a fifth of his life.
Yeah.
Because Rand at some point mentions that he thinks
They're of the
they're
same age.
of the same age.
Yeah.
So if like 100 is about the same as like 20, and that's like rough estimate, then
Yeah.
that would mean 100 is about a fifth of his life, which
Or a
means
fourth. People probably don't live to 100. Humans probably don't live to 100.
oh, that's fair.
Right.
Probably live
I'm
closer
just
to
like
80.
looking at really basic fractions, but
Yeah. If you also look at the time frames of how long Ogier can live, the fall of Manetheren being 2,000 years ago would be roughly 10 to 15 generations of Ogier. But like it's possible that the great great grandfather of an Ogier alive now would have been alive during the
that
days of
stuff.
Manetheren. So it's like
Oh.
your granddad, your grandpa's grandpa was like there.
Oh, that's interesting too.
So it's like not that far away generationally if they're living for a long time. So it's hard to say definitively because we don't know exactly how long everyone lives, but like there's book learning and then there's like you have stories passed down
right
a handful of generations versus for humans 2,000 years ago would be like 50 generations, you know?
I think that's pretty fair. But the next question comes, and the next conversation after this question of Manetheren and all, between Rand and Loyal. Because remember to the start of the chapter, the conversation that Rand has with Master Gil. He gives him the bare minimum. Hey, there are bad men chasing us. They want our lives, blah, blah, blah. What is the conversation like?
He unloads.
Well, Loyal is interested in why Rand has come so far, like a considerable distance, and he mentions again how the ways used to be cool and open and such a good way to travel, but now you have to use your dumb legs to get everywhere slowly. So, like, how did you get here? And then Rand hesitates, but then goes on to tell his entire story. And how good must this feel to be able to just actually tell somebody exactly what you've gone through? Like, he talks about the Trollocs and the Fades and everything, and he's partly relieved to be able to talk to someone openly, especially because his only other person he can talk to about anything has, quote, drawn in on himself.
Yeah, Matt's been literally no help. So, but again, this kind of begs the question, do you think that it's a good thing that Rand told Loyal everything?
Yes, I think he is trusting his gut, and we have talked enough about how Rand needs to trust his gut more.
That's
and
true,
he feels like he can trust this person, or not person, this
he's a person.
This guy.
He's not a human, but he's a person.
And so I think I like it that he does this. Like, but I'm on board with it. Like, there's a lot of things that I get really pissed off about these boys for doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of people he tells things he shouldn't tell.
Yes, all the time. But I'm already, like, Loyal's one of my favorite characters.
So here's a sentence I want to read to you, and I want to hear what Dani thinks on it. Rand opened his mouth to say that they had come to see the false dragon, and he could not say it. Perhaps it was because Loyal acted as if he were no older than Rand, 90 years old, or no 90 years old. Maybe for an Ogier, 90 years was not any older than he was. It had been a long time since he had been able to really talk to anyone about what was happening. Always the fear that they might be dark friends or think he was. Matt was so drawn in on himself, feeding his fears.
Yeah. And then, like, he's horrified about what he's doing, but he goes on and tells the entire story about everything.
He's so horrified about telling. He lied to Master Gil about the initial story. He didn't
tell Gil about the whole thing. That's true.
To Master Gil, he said, there are bad men after me. They want to kill me and my friends.
Yeah, he didn't tell the whole story.
We are not sure why.
Yeah, but here he tells the whole story. I think, honestly, he's just trusting his gut. And I think, like, he doesn't, it's like a load off his shoulders. He really feels comfortable with Loyal. And I don't even think he could even understand why he was doing it, but he felt like it was the right thing to do. And I'm totally on board with Rand trusting his gut.
What does Loyal call Rand?
Well, immediately we get that.
What mystical name?
Yeah, the ta'veren, yeah.
Oh, yep. Then we get it right away. Yeah. So Rand starts to talk about his dreams when the hairs on the back of his neck stand up and he shuts himself up.
Yeah, so he cuts himself off at the dreams.
At the dreams, and he hopes Loyal is just like, oh, it's nightmares. And Loyal studies him carefully and then says, ta'veren. Is that how you say that?
ta'veren.
ta'veren. And I say, nice. I know that word. It's a word I've seen before.
You know ta'veren. And when you said you've seen the word before and you knew what it meant.
But I never knew what it meant at all. I didn't know. I've never, like, I've seen it on, like, you know, Twitter and stuff. But what does that say about the definite interaction between Loyal and Rand? But what does that say about the possible nature of their interaction? Well, I think that it just sort of, I write in my thing here how it's just a speech about how the wheel is woven, and I know Brett's going to go into his information on this, because this is Brett's absolute favorite part of anything we do. So I'm just going to just swing this over to Brett for some help.
Oh,
yes, we get a glossary definition here.
Ooh. It's time for glossary definitions with Brett.
Yeah, so ta'veren is a person around whom the wheel of time weaves all surrounding life threads, perhaps all life threads, to form a web of destiny. And that leads us into a second glossary definition for web of destiny, where it says, a great change in the pattern of an age centered around one or more people who are ta'veren. And then the pattern of the age for the third definition is the wheel of time weaves the threads of human lives into the pattern of an age, which forms the substance of reality for that age as an age lace.
Okay.
So I think what Andrew's alluding to is it seems like the ta'veren is the person who basically will influence the pattern to move in a specific direction.
Right. And then this is where Rand sort of asks for clarification. And he goes, so small changes are okay, but big changes are a no, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, I can move from the farm to Evansfield, and that's a small change, and that's fine. But if I just decided I wanted to be a king, that's
then
a
you
big
can't
change.
do it.
You can't do that.
But just to kind of end my thought process here, though, give it back to you here, Andrew, because you had asked, so when Rand opened his mouth to say something, he could not say it. That's the implication that it's the ta'veren nature that's influencing Rand to act a certain way to make Loyal understand that he is a ta'veren, to influence Loyal to come with him on his journey.
I do not disagree.
Yeah.
But the question here becomes, who is the ta'veren? Is it Rand that is the ta'veren acting on himself, compelling him to spill the full story? Or is Loyal enough of a ta'veren to influence Rand to spill the true full story?
Just a little bit of the push in the right direction for a small change.
Right. That this interaction between the two of them seems to be, whether it's one or the other at this point, doesn't really matter for me as someone who has no idea what's even anything. So it's just this interaction, like fate, for example, or the pattern or the wheel, the way the wheel weaves has brought these two together for something to happen, for Rand to spew this story that he's told no one, and for Loyal to understand that Rand is important and special.
So the definition of a ta'veren is somebody around which the pattern alters itself.
Yes.
Whether it's normally not according to their ideals and their desires, but according to what needs to happen for the pattern.
So maybe it's both, because the fact that Loyal left his steading when he wasn't supposed to, like that in itself could be ta'veren, right? Technically,
you don't know.
Yeah, but you never know. Is that Loyal's ta'veren nature, if he has one, or Rand's ta'veren nature?
Right. Well, clearly Rand is special, and something's happening around Rand, like 100%. But
I mean, maybe, possibly, who knows?
Good one, bud. Yeah,
you got the hang of it.
You
there.
got it. But I'm gonna say that Rand for sure is special, but like maybe Loyal is also special. Like, what's to say that they're not both this ta'veren? What is it? ta'veren. Yeah.
ta'veren.
Yeah.
What's to say that they're both not that, right?
It's possible. We just have literally no clue.
We have just nothing. And
just
you
got
guys
a definition.
Don't have nothing. I have nothing.
We have some things. You have less than that.
Right. At this point, Loyal just decides that he wants to travel with Rand, but that is a hard no from Rand. Like, it's just too bad. And I actually write in my notes here that no matter what, like, I know you have some other things to
Yeah.
add in there, but I think no matter what, he will travel with them anyway. This is my
I was
prediction.
gonna say that this didn't sound like a hard no to me.
Oh, I thought it sounded like a no. It's too dangerous. Don't you know what's going on with me? Of course, you can't come with us. It's too dangerous.
So when I read this, I thought that it sounded more like a Rand trying to give Loyal an out to change his mind.
Yeah, it could be. It definitely could be.
Well, because if you think about Rand's thought process, Loyal says, "I'm coming with you." Then Rand thinks to himself, "Well, Matt's kind of being a dick right now. It might be safer if I can travel with somebody." And then he says
But
to
then
Loyal,
he also thinks Loyal's 10 feet tall and stands out like
How am I
a
gonna hide
fucking
him?
oak tree.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
he says, "Okay, well, maybe it's not the best idea." So to me, it didn't sound like a hard no. It sounded like a soft no.
Okay,
It sounded
fine.
like maybe it's not the best idea.
Okay, I think that once he like thought it through, he was like, yeah, actually not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But prediction time, because I think he will travel with them.
Okay.
Because this seems to be a Nynaeve situation. Because remember when Nynaeve found them in Barrelon
Yeah.
and said, "No, of course I'm not coming with you. I've come here to take you guys back." And then that whole Fade showing up in the inn thing happened. And then all of a sudden Nynaeve was going on with them and traveling with them. So I think that this is a no, you can't travel with me, but he's going to end up traveling with them.
Interesting.
That's
Okay.
my prediction on that. And at this point, Rand gets sort of choked up about his friends being all right, and he's sort of concerned that they're actually not okay. And Loyal actually tries to comfort him and understands why it's not safe to travel with him. So he, instead of pushing the issue, I guess it's sort of like the soft nature of
Yeah.
Ogier, but
It's not confrontational.
no, it's not at all. He just says, "Okay, I get your point, but like, will you still talk to me sometimes?" Like, he's just a lonely guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's just so lonely.
Well, he came out here to experience the world, and so far
and
it's not
every
been so
human
nice.
is so
Yeah.
mean to him. It's like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Just because he looks different.
I do want to point out one really interesting thing, because in this whole Taviran conversation, though, before we end the chapter, it is mentioned that Archer Hawkwing
Oh, was a Taviran.
was Taviran,
And
and
so
so
was
was Luz
Luz
Theron Kingslayer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Luz. My
Yeah.
buddy Luz, the dragon.
Yeah.
Oh, so interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder who the Dragon Reborn will be. Probably another Taviran.
Oh, yeah, it might be.
Possibly.
Oh, I wonder.
But it also kind of just brings into that whole concept of fate, right? Because that was one
Yeah.
of my questions for both you guys, Andrew and
Mhm.
Danny. Fate as a concept, having threads pulled in one direction or another. Some people believe in fate, some people don't. So I just wanted to ask your guys' opinions.
So, my personal belief, I did grow up in the Southern Baptist tradition that there is an ultimate good, an ultimate bad, that there exists a time in your reality that you can essentially do anything and ultimately request to be pardoned for all the wrong. I do not believe that any person has a predestined fate.
There you go. Okay.
I fully believe that every person has their own right to decide what's wrong, what is right. I believe there are millions of threads of wrong and right. I mean, that gets very, very philosophical.
Yeah, it does. And that's okay, because I think that that is in and of itself the answer to Brett's question. And for me, personally, I find it interesting because I don't know if you remember, Brett, but in our high school and in our province of Manitoba, where we went to high school, the Manitoba provincial exam
Yeah.
for English in grade 12,
Yeah.
what the question was, do you believe in fate?
Yeah. I just for the record, I got 100% in English.
And I like probably barely passed.
Yeah.
Quite honestly.
Nice.
Like, that was not a good exam for me because I was, I think, too blunt about my opinions. And at the time, 17-year-old Dani did not, hard no, believe in fate. I
Okay.
100% believed in nothing. I believed in no afterlife. I believed in absolutely there's no such thing. That's insane. Your actions determine your consequences in the end. But interesting things happen in your life that make you be a little more introspective and make you see things in a different way. And now, whatever we are out of high school, 12, almost 13 years later, I have a completely different view, and I do believe things to be, as the wheel weaves. So,
Okay. That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
the will
that's
weaves as the will
right.
wills.
And so I do think that my opinions have hard changed in a span of 10 years.
Yeah.
So
Guys, it's not a soft change. This is a hard
hard
change.
change, in
Hard
case
change,
anybody's
yeah.
wondering.
So you need to apply some oil to your change ability.
It'll
Maybe
make the
some
transition.
WD-40.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
smooth the transition a little bit here.
Yeah,
little
but
bit of
no, it was
WD-40.
a hard change. And so for your question, now in my life, I do believe in some version of fate. So, and what about you, Brett? A yes or a no, just because for time's sake.
For time's sake, I would say no.
Oh.
I don't believe in fate.
Okay, interesting, Brett. Thank you.
It is a very interesting
It
topic.
is interesting. We could have a whole podcast just on this. I want to get back to just Ran, who's like getting choked up about his friends being all right. And he's all upset because maybe, he's thinking about how dangerous it is for him to travel and how now he's in Camelin. He has to go to Tarvalin alone and he's never going to find his friends again.
Rand nodded his thanks. His throat was too tight to speak. Will you at least talk with me sometimes? Loyal sighed.
He's just lonely.
A bass tremble or rumble. And perhaps play a game of stones. Of course I will. His voice was hoarse. He cleared his throat and tried to grin. And if we meet in Tarvalin, you can show me the grove there.
So cute. That's so sweet.
They have to be all right. Light sin, they're all right. And thus ends chapter 36 of The Eye of the World, and Rand praying that those he loves and enjoys are all right. For Loyal just hopes to have someone new to talk to.
I know, isn't it so sweet? I like this new budding friendship. That is the end of this chapter, and that's going to be the end of this episode, but I like this. I'm positive about it, and I'm quite honestly just so excited to keep reading. I can't wait. I want to know what happens next. I am still so sure that Moraine and Lan and Nynaeve are gonna show up. I am hoping that Perrin and Egwene are already here because we got note that White Cloaks are here. So I am still thinking Camelin's the place to be. We got nothing but negative about Camelin and no one's here. And I think that was to throw us off because everyone's here. That's my hope and my prediction.
And just in the order of the chapters, we got a huge chunk of Rand and Matt. And the last we left, like Moraine and Nynaeve and Perrin and Egwene, was way in the past.
Yes.
So we got a huge,
where are they? What's going on? I don't even know how long it's been since we've last seen them. So I'm hoping to see them soon. Anyway, and that's my prediction.
All right.
So we really want to thank you, Andrew, for coming on and being a guest here. And everyone should go check out the Black Tower podcast if you want a full spoiler Wheel of Time podcast to listen to.
Oh, you guys are far too kind. These guys are absolutely fantastic, absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you, Andrew. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we all know in the end, the will weaves as it wills.
It really does.
And the will has weaved so that we have this podcast episode together.
Right.
You guys, if you're not already, definitely go to these guys' Patreon and support them and love them and show them the love that the Will Weaves podcast deserves. Listen to our podcast where we have no filter, we say whatever, we do whatever, and we don't really care what people say about us. I have listened to it.
I think that's just like a benefit of you guys. You're awesome.
Yeah, let's try to go with that, and I appreciate it.
Very cool. And I think what we can say at this point is it's part of the pattern.
Yeah, it's part of the pattern now. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Wheel Weaves. If you're interested in bonus content,
cool stickers, shoutouts, access to exclusive insider looks, and to support us making great content, you can head over to patreon.com/thewheelweavespodcast. You can find us on social media where we love interacting with our listeners. We're on Twitter at The Wheel Weaves Podcast and on Instagram at The Wheel Weaves Podcast. You can also join the conversation on our Discord channel. There is a channel for no spoilers that I have access to, and we also have a spoilers channel that Brett controls, so fun for everybody. There will be a link on Twitter and also over on our Patreon page. You can check that out. Please feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe. This really does make a huge difference. Plus, if you want to tell a friend about us, maybe someone who is just getting into the book series for the first time, or other longtime fans who you think would enjoy us, word of mouth is the best way for us to reach new listeners, and we would take it as a really huge compliment. Thanks, as always, to audionautics.com for the music, and thanks to you awesome listeners.